That's so we can talk. That's a high.
circle of loss. Come into this circle of compassion. Come into this circle of memory. Come into this circle of love. This afternoon, we gather to mourn the death and to celebrate the life of our beloved Jamie Grassmann, who has walked the way with us and blessed us with his presence. Welcome, beloveds, into this place in which we are blessed by the remembrance of a man who was loved deeply and who loved his family, his friends, his work, and life so well. Welcome into this place in which we will create our own blessing as we give thanks for the life of Jamie Grassmann. Welcome to this stone temple built almost 200 years ago in the heart of Quincy on the traditional lands of the Neponset tribe of the Massachusetts people, a people who have lived here for generations, building a community, caring for the land, and who live here to this day. Welcome to United First Parish Church, a Unitarian Universalist congregation which was Jamie's spiritual home for decades. I'm the Reverend Rebecca Froome, lead minister here at UFPC, and I'm honored to have known Jamie as his minister for over 11 years. And our affiliated lay community minister, Nan Moore, is joining me in officiating today's celebration of life service. Here in this stone temple, I am so aware of Jamie's absence, and even more aware of his presence. I can almost see Jamie standing at those grand doors on a Sunday morning, serving as a greeter, helping church members find their name tags and handing a flower to a visitor. I can see Jamie puttering in the tech pew, getting the live stream set up so that people of all abilities and geographies can participate in our Sunday service. And I can see and hear Jamie standing here in this high pulpit with poise and power, reading the words of Maya Angelou's amazing piece on Christmas Eve. I can see Jamie sitting in the pews next to a loved one, sharing that simple intimacy of holding a hymnal together, of lifting voice in a song, opening hearts and ears to the wisdom of the gathered community and the service. I can see Jamie in each of you who are serving those roles today, ready to share a hymnal or a smile or a word of encouragement, handing out orders of service and setting up the reception. Jamie died almost 2 months ago, following a 3.5-year struggle with aggressive cancer. While Jamie experienced and expressed many thoughts and emotions during those years, in his final months, he was often, not always, but often fiercely optimistic that his health would stabilize and that he would be able to travel to his beloved kayak and paddle on the lake near his home in Beckett, where he could rest in the grace of the world. He was making plans to travel there to his beloved community, to travel back here to this sanctuary, to this beloved community. He wanted so much to be able to be here with us, to be here with you. On the Sunday after Jamie died, those of us who gathered in the sanctuary were full of a sharp grief for our spiritual companion who was taken from us too soon. It was our annual Pride Month service. And in some ways, the service became a testament to Jamie. With love and with gratitude, we sang and we cried, and we honored the living legacy of Pride and Jamie's place within that movement for LGBTQ+ equality. In the weeks since his death, your grief may have softened into a sweet sadness, where it may feel as raw as it did in those early days in June. Grief can be messy, confusing, unpredictable. So whatever you are feeling this afternoon as we remember Jamie, you and your grief are welcome here. So welcome into this place that we create sacred by our coming together in celebration of Jamie's life. Your presence is a blessing, your witness a gift, your love divine. This afternoon, we will be hearing reflections from two members of our church community, Curtis and Brenda, from Jamie's sisters, Alicia and Jessica, and a eulogy from Jim, Jamie's beloved husband of 34 years. And later in the service, there will be a time for anyone who is moved to share a brief remembrance of Jamie from the microphone at the podium. And following the service, all are invited to gather for a reception. We have space in the parish hall through these doors. We have outside space. We have space in the dining room. So you can spread out and greet one another and continue to share memories. While we can no longer have the conversations with Jamie that we once had, through the sharing of our memories and listening to one another's stories, Jamie's life story continues to dwell within and with each of us. Jamie was a creative person, and so it is fitting that we honor him not only with our words, but with art, with music, and with the mementos and pictures that were dear to Jamie in life. So here we have what our congregation calls a still life of mementos and pictures dear to Jamie. We welcome you to look at those after the service. And each of you should have received in your order of service a postcard from Jamie, a picture of his beloved Buckley-Dunton Lake in October Mountain State Forest, a picture that he took from his kayak with words on the back that he wrote in our writers group about the pond. You can also use that postcard as a bit of a fan to bring those Berkshire's breezes and cool waters here into Quincy Center. And now I invite everyone to take a deep breath, feeling that spirit of life that moves within, between, and beyond us all. That breath of life that rides the winds from Squantum to Beckett, from Oklahoma City to Washington, D.C. Take a breath together, arriving here in this place, in this time, in this circle of memory, in this sanctuary where generations of open-hearted people have gathered to honor their loved ones in memorial services, weddings, child dedications. It is the tradition of Unitarian Universalist congregations to begin our worship service with the lighting of a flaming chalice, symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition. This flame is an embodiment of our shared values, ideals, and aspirations. Jamie was a lifelong Unitarian Universalist. He has carried the flame of our faith tradition to congregations in many regions of the country. And I believe Jamie himself embodied the inclusive, compassionate, creative, and fiercely loving spirit that we celebrate and honor through the ritual of lighting the chalice. I invite Fiona and Daphne and Laura to come and light our chalice this afternoon.
These are Jamie's words, written in a journal dated March 7th, 2025.
In times of nearly continuous physical pain, my times of joy have been small.
When our kitty Abigail must have cuddles.
When a friend stopped by with treats.
My husband lying beside me as we watch TV.
I miss the joy of gathering with friends at church.
I have missed my life here.
I want to find all the joyful hymns and start practicing so we can fill the sanctuary with joyful noise.
Bigger joys yet to come.
And let us fill this sanctuary with joyful noise by singing hymn number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. It was one of Jamie's favorite hymns in our UU hymnal, and it was sung in every season here on Sunday services, and it was sung at Jim and Jamie's wedding here in this sanctuary. So please rise in body or spirit and join in singing number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. My name is Nan Moore. Beginnings and endings. Our lives are filled with beginnings and endings, sunrises and sunsets, beginning of a year, the end of a year, beginning of cancer treatment, and the end of cancer treatment. The full life markers for all of us are birth and death. We experience him as humorous, kind, tender, aware, and a devoted partner and friend who understood compassion. His spirit deeply touched all of us personally in some way. His transition brings a load of grief to our hearts, yet we are here today in community to turn the grief into relief as we listen to music and lifelong stories that captivate Jamie's essence. It is a blessing for all of us to be here together today. So I'd like to offer, this is one of my favorite poems, and Rebecca and I will share this with you.
And this is The Dash by Linda Ellis, adapted by Nan Moore. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on his tombstone from the beginning to the end.
He noted that first came the date of his birth and spoke of the following date with tears, but he said what mattered most was the dash between the years.
For that dash represents all the time that he spent alive on earth, and now only those who love him know what that little line is worth.
For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the house, the cash. What matters is how we live in love and how we spend our dash.
So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged.
If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real and try to understand the way that other people feel.
And be less quick to anger and show appreciation more. And love the people in our lives like we never loved before.
If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remember that that special dash might only last a little while.
So when your eulogy is read, with the value of your relationships to rehash, would you be proud to say about how you spend your dash?
So, dear friends, we are here to remember a husband, a brother, a relative, and friend, all gathered in community to remember Jamie Grassmann from the beginning to the end. So let's just take a moment in silence to honor Jamie's spirit. Gently we feel his presence, that he is still connected to all of us. May we sit in quiet gratitude in this day, that the sacred bond continue that we share with Jamie eternally. And may it be so.
In memorial services, we often hear a eulogy, as we will today. And at its root, the word eulogy means good words or good wisdom. And today, as we hear one another's reflections and memories from friends and family, we will share our own good words as we remember the good wisdom that Jamie gave to us. As we take time to honor Jamie's wisdom, I find myself remembering that Jamie was someone who could see the goodness and inner wisdom in those around him. Jamie was human and therefore imperfect, generous of spirit, though not always. And of course, he could be filled with righteous anger about injustice. Yet he interacted with those around him with great compassion and authenticity. Jamie was one of the very first people I met at United First Parish Church. He was part of a team of devoted congregants who served on the ministerial search committee. Jamie had been tasked with surveying the congregation about their spiritual identity and hopes for the future of this community. And Jamie took this work a step further and recorded congregants sharing stories about the congregation. So in many ways, I first came to know United First Parish Church through Jamie's eyes and ears. And with Jamie as my guide, it was so very clear that this was a loving community. He showed me the best of this community because he saw and celebrated what was good and true and beautiful about his spiritual companions. Our first two reflections this afternoon are from some of Jamie's spiritual companions here at United First Parish Church. So I invite Curtis DeBishop. Not sure where you are, Curtis. And there you are, great. Curtis and Brenda Reed, if you could both go up to the high pulpit and share your reflections from there, one of the places where Jamie has also stood and shared.
Good afternoon. My name is Curtis. Jamie was my mentor for the UU Coming of Age program and my family's next door neighbor. In the weeks prior to Jamie's passing, I was reflecting greatly on my childhood. Just a month prior, I moved away from my home after a few post-college years living in Boston. Throughout my move, my mind was stuck on UFPC. Researching UU parishes in my new in my new city, I knew that unfortunately a new parish did not come with the people that made this building such a wonderful spiritual home. Many of these special people are here today and were my thoughts during this time, but no one as much as Jamie. In retrospect, it feels like the universe was telling me to keep Jamie in my thoughts during his last few weeks with us. Growing up, both Jim and Jamie were part of a large network of second parents for the three Porter DeBishop children, Stephen and Ben. Despite using second parents myself, I've always struggled a bit with this term. The age-diverse friendships of USPC are not the stern, watchful eyes one might associate with parents. They're in every way full-fledged friendships, rich in guidance, support, and love. To my friends outside of UFPC, the idea of having friends decades older than you was always a little bizarre. But to those of us who experienced how special it felt as a child to be treated as a peer and a friend, it is one of our most treasured feelings about this place and its congregants. From hiring me for my first paid work, raking leaves, to the first wedding I ever attended, or just stopping to say hello on the street, Jim and Jamie were more than trusted adults for three young kids. They were loved ones who you could confide in, laugh with, cherish, take for granted, and everything in between. As my coming-of-age mentor, Jamie took the abstract UU principles and put them into the real-world beliefs. He embodied a rare selflessness and worldview that valued lifelong social education and understanding of others. It sounds silly to say out loud, But Jamie was the first person to make me realize that I exist within the history and context of those around me. That it was not my belief in social principles and justice that mattered, but my actions and decisions. That social justice and peace are not isolated principles, but are reflected in what music we listen to, what we read, who we surround ourselves with, and how we love. As part of the coming of age curricula, an overnight learn-in brought teens and mentors together to talk and learn about each other. Truthfully, there's not a lot I remember about this night. However, seared into my mind is a memory of Jamie asking me, if you could have dinner with one person from history, who would it be? 14-year-old me half-heartedly answered whatever pop artist I was listening to that week, with very little regard to the question. While other people would have idly ignored this foolish answer or chastised me for saying it, Jamie pushed back. Really? Out of all the people in the world, why not one of the authors we read tonight? Why not an intellectual, an activist, historical figure? I, of course, didn't have an answer. He got me. His question was not belittling or reprimanding, though. He genuinely wanted an explanation, not because he wanted to embarrass me, but because he was genuinely invested in my learning and growth. In this moment, I had a bit of an awakening. Other faiths might call it a come to Jesus moment, but of course not us UUs. Jamie subtly pointed out to me that there was more to my life than just myself, that there were decisions I made and beliefs I held that were bigger than me. Ultimately, Jamie had a great ability to treat you as special, but not to treat you differently. No matter who you were, he talked to you with the integrity and care he granted everyone else. In a society of preferential treatment and tailored speech, Jamie somehow combined honesty with the most earnest kindness. He was the easiest person to pick up a conversation with after years of not speaking. He effortlessly accepted a helping hand, then immediately reached out his own. He was the first person to crack a joke, as well as the first person to step up to perform the Heimlich maneuver, which, yes, many of us actually witnessed here in this church. The day after Jamie passed, my mom called me to let me know that things were taking a turn. Overwhelmed with regret for not having reached out sooner, I rushed to the nearest stationery store to write him a letter I hoped would arrive in time. Picking up the card, I walked straight past the sappy get well soon cards and felt a magnetism towards the thank you and world's best teacher cards, for what I think are pretty obvious reasons. Unfortunately, there were no world's best coming of age mentor and neighbor cards to choose from. Following his passing, I continued to struggle explaining our relationship to those who did not know him. 35 years my senior, Jamie has been a friend for the majority of my life. That type of relationship is unheard of for so many, which I think is a shame. More people need a community like UFPC, more people need a Jamie in their life, and ultimately the world needs more Jamie Grassmanns. Thank you.
We have socially constructed templates for losing a parent, a child, or a life partner. But the lack of social templates in the death of a friend plays a big role in isolating people in their grief. These are the words by Rebecca Sokol, a therapist. She isn't comparing degrees of grief. She just acknowledges that there really isn't a model for how we talk about the loss of a friend, the person, their friendship, the shared trust, respect, and support, and the space they hold in our everyday lives. It is no small thing to make connections, let alone full-on friendships in adulthood. Developing a friendship requires intention and an investment of time. Two things in short supply in our adulting lives, making friendship a rare and precious gift. That is why it is so vital that we have gathered today to celebrate Jamie Grassmann and his connection, his friendship in our lives, even as we acknowledge the empty space he has left behind. Today, we will not be isolated in our grief. A church congregation is a chosen community, not a community of circumstances. Most of us come to a spiritual community seeking sanctuary, literally and figuratively. If we're lucky, we find like-minded people with whom we can try to make sense of our lives and our world. As church members and friends, we take and we give. We are not perfect. We disappoint. We become annoyed with one another. We forgive. And collectively, we sometimes pull off amazing feats of courage and love. And many days we just hang out and enjoy each other's company. Throughout our lives, there are many communities in which we travel. I have a mental image of community as this raft moving down a river of time. People clamber on, they change their minds and jump off. Sometimes they fall off. All the while, the raft continues traveling through time, collecting and discharging passengers in randomly calm or turbulent waters. Here at United First Parish Church, Jamie loved to help people climb onto the raft. He welcomed the stranger, the newcomer. He listened intently. He remembered people's stories. He helped newcomers build connections with others. He rarely judged, I won't say never, but rarely, accepted people with all their foibles and was generous in his forgiveness. If his role were to pull people onto the raft, I would add that Jamie's superpower was steadfastness. He was not only faithful to people, he was also faithful to the roles he filled in church life. When he committed to something, he showed up. He showed up when he wasn't feeling great, and when there were any number of reasons why it would have been easier to go straight home from work versus attending yet another evening church meeting. He showed up when it was boring, when we were celebratory, and when there was a crisis. Jamie was instrumental in helping this techno-peasant congregation stand up live stream Sunday services within 2 weeks of the COVID lockdown in 2020. Live stream kept many people on the raft when the waters of society were especially tempestuous and the future unknown. I'd like to think that Jamie left behind a sort of imprint of his steadfastness DNA on the members of the congregation, including those who never met him. When I reached out to ask for volunteers to help with today's service and reception, people who had started attending services after Jamie was no longer able to be here in person, people who had never physically met him, enthusiastically volunteered their time. The individual may pass on, but I believe the collective holds the memories, spirit, and gifts of those who came before. His church, however, was not the only community that he inhabited. There were others. His Quincy neighborhood, his Washington, D.C. circle, the Beckett Berkshire's denizens, the theater community, his place of work, the online gaming community, and social media groups, and I'm sure there were others. He stayed engaged in each community for as long as he could, despite the ever-increasing strictures of his advancing cancer. Jamie spoke to what it meant to him to be a part of this church community. Well, spoke is not the right word, I guess wrote, in an April 2025 Facebook posting. His comments were in response to a post about John Quincy Adams, who in 1841 argued in the Supreme Court, a timely quote, "The president does not have the power to deny due process to anyone in the United States, regardless of where they are from." Jamie wrote, "It is hard to express the kinship and pride I feel as a member of the same continuous congregation as this great president and his father before him. To sit in the pew that he sat in, to have been married directly above his final resting place, to see his bust and his words flanking the altar flanking the altar I have before me at church every time I am in that sanctuary." Jamie himself recognized that members of this community are able to celebrate the great occasions of their own lives, births, coming of age, marriage, and death, within the longer arc of this historic congregation dating back to 1639. But he likely wouldn't have recognized himself as now being part of its DNA. Some of our church friends and members have been famous, yet most of us have been uncelebrated and lost to history. While we are inspired by the ones who made the history books, we are nourished and sustained by the members and friends who do the steady work of keeping the raft afloat. Jamie is physically gone, but the memory of him is not. We can honor him by filling his big, empty shoes in the many communities where his absence is felt. Steadfast and steady on.
I invite Paula, Ken, and Michael to honor Jamie's life with a musical interlude, Book of Love by Magnetic Fields.
The book of love is long and boring. No one can lift the damn thing. It's full of charts and facts and figures and instructions for dancing, but I love it when you read to me and you can read me anything. The book of love has music in it. In fact, that's where music comes from. Some of it is just transcendental. Some of it is just really dumb, but I love it when you sing to me and you can sing me anything. The book of love is long and boring and written very long ago. It's full of flowers and heart-shaped boxes and things we're all too young to know. But I love it when you give me things and you ought to give me wedding rings and I love it when you give me things and you ought to give me wedding rings. You ought to give me wedding rings.
Thank you. I invite Jamie's sisters, Alicia and Jessica, to share their reflection.
As Rebecca said, we're Jamie's sisters. I'm Jessica, and I was 18 months younger than Jamie.
I'm Alicia, and I was 15 years younger than Jamie.
Jamie had a tremendous big heart and would help anyone. As his little sister, at least the first little sister, he watched over me and tended to me. As we grew older, he would still take care of me And I even convinced him on one or more occasions to take the blame for something that I had done. And, you know, I might have been a little bossy, but Jamie was definitely, he was out there to help us. Jamie would jump in to help whenever he saw the need with family, friends, and even animals. There was a time he rescued possum babies and put them in his bathroom. He really was there to help anyone.
My first and only memory of living with Jamie is him hanging upside down from a closet rod. We were playing hide and seek, and I was probably 3 or 4. Remembering this always makes me ask the question of how he was the best big brother I could ask for, even though he was geographically so far away for most of my life. The answer was really simple. He loved me.
As you've heard today, music was really important to Jamie, and he loved to listen to music as well as create it. That's his ukulele down there that he learned to play. And he gave me my first CD player, my first CDs. He was well above in music. I hadn't even really heard of CDs yet. So he really opened my world to music in a way that would not have been there without him. I still think of him whenever I hear The Cure, Depeche Mode, Sisters of Mercy, and many other of his favorites.
Jamie influenced all the things a big brother should: my taste in music, movies, video games, and graphic novels. He gave me artwork that meant my walls have never been bare. When we were together, he took me on adventures. I remember going to the National Zoo with him, the National Arboretum, chasing each other with sparklers one 4th of July. He continued that with my children, letting my youngest attach bows and feathers to his hair and teaching my eldest to play the ukulele.
Jamie loved travel and adventure. He and our cousin Jeff traveled to Germany after the Berlin Wall came down because they wanted to see what change looked like. And he brought us all back pieces of the wall, pieces of that change. He had numerous adventures and trips, many with Jim, in his short 60 years of life. Today would have been his 61st birthday, and he would have loved how big a celebration is that we are having for him.
Jamie's love and respect for others was contagious. During the past few years, he became a favorite of the doctor's offices and treatment centers he would visit. As he told me once, I like being the patient the nurses come to for a break. If I need something, I ask, but I am also just a calm place for them to rest. I'm sure he shared many of those hours with recommendations for books and movies, and I'm sure some of them were really weird. Those were always our favorites.
Jamie was his best self, though, once Jim came into his life. Together, they had a full life filled with lots of friends. I think this is illustrated some by the post that Jim put out to let people know that Jamie had passed away. Though there were 941 reactions, there were 845 comments. Think about that. 845 comments of people who wanted to talk about the impact Jamie had had, that Jim had had, and to provide support for Jim.
We want to acknowledge all the friends and family members watching us from afar who were unable to travel here. Our Uncle Tom was able to make the trip from Wyoming, as was our cousin James from Oregon. We want to send love out to our dad, John, and his wife, Cindy, watching from Oklahoma City. Also to our Uncle Tim and Aunt Debbie, who are watching from Oregon, and Aunt Sandy and Uncle Mike, who are watching from New Mexico. Jamie held a special place in all of their hearts.
We both feel blessed to have had Jamie as a brother, and he continues to be with us in our hearts and through the music, books, and movies that he loved, even the really odd ones. Though I would have to say, we both would say, that the world feels slightly less bright without Jamie in it.
And I invite James to come and share the reading from Peter and Wendy at the end of chapter 8 by James M. Barr.
Peter was alone on the lagoon. The rock that he was standing on was very small now and would soon be submerged. Pale rays of light tiptoed across the waters and by was to be heard a sound. At once the most, but he was afraid at last. A tremor ran through him like a shudder passing over the sea. But on the sea, one shudder follows another till there are hundreds of them. And Peter felt just the one. Next moment, he was standing erect on the rock again, with that smile on his face and a drum beating within him. It was saying, "To die will be an awfully big adventure."
Now I invite Jim to share a eulogy.
Look at you. Hi. I have some words. I need to say them to you, and with your help, I will get through this. The day he passed was long and draining for us. When I got home, I found myself wandering through the rooms of the house, and a snippet of song went through my head. And ever since, that snippet goes through my head several times a day. And with one word change and adjusted pronouns, daily, I sing its 20 seconds. Isn't he beautiful? There he is. There he is. There he is. There he is. Jamie is everywhere. You would have loved him so much. Isn't he beautiful, though? There are some people here today who were also with me many years ago, September 13th, 1991, when I stood at a pulpit at the Unity Church on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. to celebrate the life of my first partner, Raymond Davila. Several months before his death, Raymond had asked me to thank everyone. Naturally, that became the theme of my eulogy, giving thanks for the support of friends who stood by us during the 5 years of the devastating illness that led to his death. Raymond said, "James, thank everyone for me." I said in reply, "I can do that. I will do that." And he said, "Thank you." Jamie knew that story, though we didn't meet until some time had passed. But he knew that story because he never tired of all my stories of that time and never needed to diminish that experience of Raymond in my life because he knew it defined me in many ways. With that, my mind reeled when several months ago, sitting in the hospital, after a few minutes of happy silence between us, Jamie suddenly looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and said, "Jim, baby, give them all my love." And I recognized the instruction. And I looked back at him and said, "I can do that. I will do that." And he giggled a little and I giggled back because we were both nervous and because we both knew. And he said, "Thank you." On that day in April 2025, Jamie was imagining us today. All of us in this sanctuary, a beloved and sacred place for him and us. The place where we were married. He imagined all of us here, gathered in memory of him, with me in this pulpit, choking out words in his honor and in his memory. Today, what he imagined has come to pass. I stand before you now in the sanctuary, in this pulpit, a messenger of Jamie Grassmann, my husband of 34 years, with his explicit message: Jamie gives you all his love. It is no small thing, I am fond of saying that, to be the recipient of all of Jamie Grassmann's love. His capacity for love was prodigious. Today, our worlds collide as the universe colludes to drop us together into this sanctuary. Bonded by Jamie's love, a glue that holds us together as a community, united by his love for the next shared moments of our lives. Throughout our lives, if we are lucky, we encounter people of importance to us, people who we shape and who shape us, our hearts. We experience unique ties with people we share distinct parts of our life journey. And about these people of significance and importance, we are asked questions like, where'd you meet? How'd you find each other? What's the story? Far more interesting to me is pondering and cherishing the moment when I recognize that the person before me had become significant. That aha moment. And they happened in unexpected places. A high school classroom, boom. A college dorm, boom. A conversation on a subway platform, boom. A Greenwich Village bookstore, boom. A kitchen, boom. For Jamie and me, it happened on a walk. At his request, a walk through the unmanicured paths of the National Arboretum in Northeast Washington, D.C. Neither manicured nor overly designed, the many acres of it offer a rustic display of trees and flowers that for a person like Jamie, who relished such things, was a wonderland. Jamie was 27 when we met. I was 36. He was a feral young man, engaged in the work of surviving life in a gay subculture that was as dangerous as it was protective. In the playgrounds of our world, my Jamie was cool. He was super cool, intimidatingly cool, which made him a very successful bartender in the local leather bar where he was an attraction. And I got him. But the Jamie of the Arboretum, my Jamie, revealed who he was at heart, a sweet, loving soul who adored nature, appreciated simple things, and who felt great joy in sharing his enthusiasms with a guy he had grown to like, admire, and respect. As we walked, he came upon a rock about a foot long, 8 inches wide, and he looked at me and said, "Watch this." and he bent down and turned the rock over on its side. Under it was a world teeming with life. There were worms, bugs, spiders, an alien realm that was hidden from our view by a rock in our path, but he knew it was there, and he couldn't wait to show it to me. I never saw a smile so broad and so bright. Boom. And in that instant, the aha came upon me. And in that moment, I fell in love with him. And honestly, I have little or no attraction to bugs, worms, or the creatures that live under rocks in the woods. This became a theme to Jamie's character. He shared with our friend John Reed an affection for flowers and plants that grew in the desert, succulents, a cactus, anything that managed not only to live, but to thrive and be beautiful in a terrain that was far from hospitable to life. That was Jamie's view of miraculous beauty, the life that asserts itself in an environment that is hostile to its very existence. If that sounds like a metaphor, it is apt. But for him, it was a simple truth. In a world absorbed by its microaggression, Jamie focused on his worlds of micro-magnificence. In his beloved science fiction novels, which he read voraciously and with a detailed critical vocabulary about what made one sci-fi novel genius while another was deemed mere pulp, the stories he prized involved complex tales of the terraforming of barren worlds where Eden-like lushness was provoked from planets formed by lifeless material. And in the actual world, Jamie welcomed the person he thought identified themselves as a misfit, an outsider, someone who decided they just did not connect. Jamie made it his business to reach out to that person, make them aware of what made them special, and drag them into the light of day to a community of people who might not otherwise have noticed them or valued them. This was not done out of charity. This was done because he genuinely believed in them and the unique gifts that they had to offer the world if only they could be seen. A friend of ours referred to Jamie as both an artist and an artisan. With respect for Jamie's creativity, he was a visual artist and enjoyed a strong reputation for his excellence as a designer of frames. He was meticulous and careful. He worked as an art handler at the Smithsonian's Hirshhorn Museum and for the National Museum of Women. And at his place of work for many years, he developed skills and a community of wonderful friends, some of whom are here, at the Framers Workroom in Northwest DC. He genuinely loved caring for artwork and objects by making sure that they were framed to their most artful advantage. A work of art should be perceived at its best because of the quality of the frame in which it was housed. His clients were artists and designers of all kind who would seek him and his partner Rob at the shop. They would seek him out because they knew that they would find what best served the work in front of them. Before our move to Boston, I presented him with my opportunity to serve as director of the Boston University School of Theater, half hoping he would protest and say that our lives were good in DC and why would we want to move. Instead, he said, "I think we need a new adventure." And so it was. He researched the best frame shops in Boston, and with persistence, he landed a job that would lead him to become the manager of the highly respected Stanhope Framers outlet in the Back Bay. Politically, he was renowned for his unflinching and uncompromising views. I used to tease him that his picture was next to the word polarization in the dictionary. True. But as a framer, he was a natural compromiser. He could find peace with an owner's concern about the decor of a living room and the needs of the painting before him. He could often find the best answer between blended decor and artful framing that would, as he would say, bring out the best of it, which was always his mission. Creativity is an essential part of our journey through life as gay people. For years, our relationships had to be nurtured by our own creativity and imagination. What does it mean to be partnered but not married? What are the commitments? What are the promises? How do we figure out who we are to each other? There's no model for it. So we experimented, talked, navigated, walked through the days of our lives together to arrive at who we were to each other. And in the end, it was the bond of love that carried us through the turmoils of life without the legal protections of marriage. And when those protections came, it was nothing short of living a miracle. When Jamie and I decided to get married, we decided that it should be something we did to celebrate what we had already achieved as a couple. Creativity and imagination did not end because the broader culture had decided that our relationship was suddenly legitimate. We exchanged our 1991 rings, August 3rd, 1991, at a beautiful spot at that same arboretum a few months after our walk there. We determined we would continue to wear them. On August 27th, 2011, we moved those rings from our left hands to our right hands and added our wedding rings, which we wore like a symbol of victory. For we had been through so much and had succeeded as a couple for 2 decades by the time they were exchanged. Determining our vows, we looked through the suggested formal words carefully and critically, with great help from Sheldon Bennett, our minister who is here today, who married us. Given that we were both survivors of the grim AIDS pandemic, we decided that there would be no use for the phrase, "till death do us part." For we had learned that death has no power to part if it is not given that power. And that, as he said, one tree, the one you planted and nurtured with Raymond, need not be cut down for another to be planted and nurtured by us nearby. And our tree continued to grow and thrive. Jamie loved this church, its people, its principles, and in the case of our congregation, the historic nature of our church building. He had admiration for the presidents buried below and their wives. He was so proud to be a member, to sign our names in the collection of books that chronicle its members from the early 17th century to today. I used to tease him and ask him with feigned puzzlement, "When did my leather boy turn into a church lady?" And we would laugh. But it was important to us that when we were married, we wanted it to be in a church with a congregation of people who knew us, cared about us, wished us well in celebration of who we were to each other, and this place was perfect. Jamie grew up Unitarian. One of the few things about joy to sit in a church and not shut from its pulpits. So we joined this congregation in 2008 and celebrated our wedding here 3 years later. Our vows were simple, and they were words of John Adams and closing of every letter written to his wife Abigail. We repeated them to each other, and we would say them again at each anniversary of our wedding. I am as I ever was, I am as I ever was, and as I ever shall be, and as I ever shall be, yours, yours, yours. Simple and true. Those words carried us through the rest of our lives on the planet together, and I'm banking on them to carry me through the rest of my time here. To close, one last story. My life as a theater artist was often marked by openings of productions, public speaking. I would tell him that I had to speechify yet again, as I am doing right now. And we would decide if this was something he needed to come to or not. At the end of these events, which usually involved a lot of social interaction as well, we would finally arrive home, exhausted, energy spent by the demands of such experiences. And I would always ask him, who was the only person whose opinion I really cared about, honey, how'd I do? And he would respond, sometimes with a brief treatise on what he liked, what left him confused, what he didn't like, what he liked, what left him confused, what he didn't like, where he found himself. Because my secret pleasure was always making sure that there was always a secret or message to him in everything. But most often, and probably far more frequently than I deserved, he would look at me with a big smile and say across the pillows, "Baby, you did great." And I would breathe my thanks, experience my happiness, and sleep the sleep of a happy man whose life in that moment could not be better. I cannot leave this pulpit without answering his own query about his time on the planet. I can tell you that the journey of his illness was unrelentingly challenging. For the last 3 years, he suffered physical and psychological pain that would reduce the strongest among us to babble. His journey was far from effortless, but he had the grace and the tenacity and the strength of character to keep coming back to the resilient and loving person he was at heart. My Jamie of the Arboretum. My resourceful husband did not die angry, but sweetly and courageously. Within the last 48 hours of his life, we had a conversation about what was happening next, the need to focus now on his essence and not on the parts of his body that were betraying him. And we talked about Peter Pan's conclusion at the brink, standing on the rock with the water rising, and his conclusion that to die will be an awfully big adventure. And we ended that conversation with one of the last truly coherent things he would say to me. I'd like to have more conversations like this one. I told him we would. In the last night of his life, he wrestled between consciousness and unconsciousness, but when his eyes would open, this is hard, he would lift his head off the pillow by no more than an inch, and pucker his lips to invite a kiss, which I gave him willingly, a gesture we had repeated countless times throughout our 34 years together, always followed by my saying, "I love you," and him responding, "I love you." And now, still with the slightest hint of a smile he could barely muster, he repeated that ritual at least 100 times during the last night of his life on the planet. I can imagine him now asking me, "Baby, how'd I do?" And again, I have the enormous privilege of calling up to him in the heavens to speak a great truth before a great power. Honey, you did great. I am so proud of you. You did great, and I will love you forever. Thank you.
And now we will have our musical interlude and slideshow. This is a piano piece titled "Beautiful Sadness" that Jim composed this past year in Jim and Jamie's home. was so, so beautiful. Thank you to everyone who helped make that happen. Every picture that was taken. We invite you to join us in a responsive reading. You can stand as you're willing and able. These are words by Interfaith Chaplain Roland B. Gittleson. And your response, your words are to say, "We remember him." So let's try that. We remember him.
In the rising of the sun and in its going down,
We remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember him.
in the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring,
We remember him.
in the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn,
We remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember him.
when we are weary and in need of strength,
We remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember him.
when we have joys that we yearn to share,
We remember him. So long as we live, Jamie too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. You may be seated.
So this is an invitation for those in the community who'd like to share a brief memory that you hold of Jamie. I'd like to begin. I met Jamie when I was the Director of Religious Education here at UFPC. Our relationship really began when I invited him to be a mentor for the Coming of Age program. He cared about adolescents, their inquiry, and their questions. He participated in helping luncheons and special projects and finding films to watch for popcorn theology, and it ended in the year with a giveaway ritual. Jamie took his role as a mentor very seriously because of the many mentors that he had in his life that were inspirational and that had a great lasting impact on him. He had an effortless ability to connect with anyone, and he would strike up a random conversation with anybody in coffee hour about anything. Jamie and I also experienced a cancer journey that drew us closer and more in a more spiritual way. Our conversations were mutually meaningful, sharing many tender times for both of us. Finally, when I was in the UK, I heard of Jamie's transitioning. There was something I wanted to say to him, and so I decided to create an audio call. And in that call, there was this song that I sent by Adele, "Make You Feel My Love." It just made me think so much of Jim and Jamie, and knowing that they were in this tender time at the end of his life. But the words that really struck me were, "I've known you from the moment that we met. No doubt that's where you belong." So I want to just thank you, Jim, for showing us about love that's palpable, and how much we appreciate you and how we've appreciated Jamie here in this community. So All are welcome now to share a brief memory of Jamie. So please come forward to the podium as you're able. And alternatively, you can raise your hand and then I will come around with the mic if you're more comfortable just sitting. And also for the live stream, people can write messages in the chat, which will be given to Jim and his family after today.
So let us open our hearts in the brief sharing of memories.
Hello, I'm Joshua Underwood. I've been involved with this congregation for about 3 years now. And Jamie was probably one of the first people I met, usually in the row here, sometimes with Jordan here, sometimes on his own. So as most of you who know me know, I have been in ill health myself the last couple of years. And one of the people I did regularly speak to about it when he was still able to be here in person was with Jamie. And I believe I said to him at one point that what I was dealing with could not hold a candle to his. He gave me no indication that he thought that way at all. And the last thing I remember was I had just had a major appointment the week before, and I saw a reaction on Facebook from him. And then, to be honest, that spoke enough. Light be with him and with his always. Thank you.
I was remembering the Jim and Jamie's wedding and how happy and satisfied everybody was.
You might have heard a slight audible gasp when you saw Jamie with a deer standing right next to him. Those of us who are up on October Mountain, which is that community in Beckett that Jamie was very much a part of, recognize that deer as Friendly. And Friendly and Jamie had a very good connection because Jamie and Friendly were very similar. Friendly was the kind of deer that when Verizon came to put the new cables on for all of us, the guys were working on the truck, and Friendly came out and talked to them. And they were terrified of Friendly at first, but eventually they all began to love her the way we do. Jamie had a very special connection, not only with those little creatures under the rocks, but any four-footed creature. And I know that there's some people here who know up in October Mountain there's a place called Four Corners. And you can find this video somewhere online, but one day Jamie's out there on his little bicycle, and we all love, every once in a while we get to see a moose up there. And sure enough, out of the forest comes the most gorgeous, massive bull moose with antlers and kind of gold in color. It even has sort of fetlocks hanging down here. And it's terracing across this open area right at Jamie. And you hear Jamie on the video go, very softly at first, go the other way. Go the other way. Now, any other human being would have taken shelter somewhere, but not Jamie. He had faith. And that big moose comes right at him. And finally, just before he gets there, Jamie says one more, go the other way. And it just goes the other way. And that's how special Jamie was for all of us.
I need a script. In the summer of 2004, Jim and Jamie did one of the most absurd things I've ever seen. They installed several sets of bunk beds into their tiny home in Olney, Maryland, and allowed 8 college students to live with them for the entire summer. We were part of the National Players Summer Tour doing Midsummer Night Dream. The summer was wild and full of the forest energy that comes along with doing the play. But one of my fondest memories of that whole summer was late one quiet night. I had insomnia pretty bad all through college and often puttering around once the others had gone to sleep. And this particular evening, Jamie had finished his shift at the frame store in Boston and drove nonstop to DC to be with Jim. By the time he got there, most were already asleep except for me. Jamie was in that uncomfortable mix of deeply tired and horribly wired after a long drive, and asked if I minded if he sat up with me. This may have actually been the first time we ever met. We chatted for a long time, and we found that we shared a lot in common. Primarily, we grew up in Oklahoma, and we both had a love for science fiction. We talked about favorite books and TV shows and comics and movies. And quickly I became aware that Jamie was in a whole other league than I had ever been introduced to. Eventually we both grew tired and said goodnight, and I don't actually recall seeing him the rest of the summer. But at some point later that summer, or maybe in the fall once we were back in Boston, Jim came up to me and he handed me a book. And he said, not importantly, Jamie insisted I give this to you. He thought you might like it. He handed me a brand new copy of China Miéville's Perdido Street Station. And inside was a note. Tim Spears, it will take a while to know what is going on. Just go with the beauty and horror of it. Jay. At the time, it felt like a very kind gesture, but I was too young and distracted to fully appreciate what he had actually done, offering a young 19-year-old he barely knew a push towards the strange and wonderful, opening a door and offering me a lens in which to see more of the world than I'd ever seen before. Over time, that tipping point between beauty and horror became a theme in much of the work that Jim and I created together. Stories that often had a little piece of Jim or Jamie somewhere in them. And through that work, I began to understand more about Jamie and what he wanted to share with me. A kind of grand thesis for how to walk through the world. It will take a little while to know what's going on. Just go with the beauty and horror of it. Thank you, Jamie.
I don't want to derelict my duty too much of participating in the live stream that Jamie himself started. There was one writing group session, and I don't remember what the topic was. I'm sorry, Jim. I don't remember what I wrote, but I just remember, the only thing I do remember is Jamie talking about this story of the 100th monkey. There's this idea on an island of like 100 monkeys. There will always be one doing something different from the rest, no matter how much evolution, logical, cultural sense. There's always going to be somebody who is just going to look at everything going on and just go, nah, I'm going to do it my way. And not only did that just click of like, yes, that's who Jamie is. He sought out so many people and recognized that special uniqueness in so many people that, hey, just because the entire world is telling you to do something else, be something else, there's always going to be other people in your court. You're always going to come across that 1 in 100 person who's going to see and recognize the special and amazing uniqueness in you. And I'll never be able to thank him enough for letting me carry a part of him to always remind me of that in me, giving me a community where that is respected, and there are many other people like that here. And what I hope can go forward carrying on that mission that Jamie had within himself, and I hope we can all do that in his memory. So, thank you all.
Reverend Michelle Walsh, this is my husband. Reverend Clyde, Jamie helped to videotape our wedding, for which I will be always grateful, but more than that, I'm just grateful for Jamie's presence in my life since, I don't know, Jim, when you guys first came, was it during my internship or my community ministry years? But knowing you guys for that long, and Jamie was such a precious person in my life and somebody who was fully alive at every moment. And there's so few people who are able to be fully alive and love this life through what he ended up going through. And I always will be touched by that, be touched by all our different Facebook messages over the years and things that he would share with me. His love of science fiction that we shared. He'd be the only person who would know what the film War of the Gargantuans was, or if I had a sci-fi question, he could find something for me. So, but I want to read to you, following up with what you just said, my goddaughter Gina also had a relationship that she maintained with Jamie, and she was on, at least for some of the Zoom today. She wanted to say, he was a great person, always smiling despite what he was facing. He was so strong, and he always managed to check in with me and encourage me. I pray he rest in peace.
Yeah, I don't have anything prepared. But he always showed up when when I needed that support, and that was kind of our connection. And I don't know how he did it, and I don't know how he knew. But yeah, he was pretty special. And one of the things that I remember over the last year, he was recording, he's trying to record, and he couldn't figure out how to get his phone to do it. Jim playing the piano in the background. And he said, I'm sitting here listening to this right now. He's like, this isn't working. This isn't working. And he's like, and it was just constant. I had like 4 messages from him, like, I can't hear him. I'm sorry, I want to hear this so badly. It sounds beautiful. Yeah, I miss him.
We got to know Jim and Jamie through my brother-in-law, Ken and Paul, in the Berkshires, and we're honored to be invited to the wedding. And I was filming for Jim and Jamie for the wedding. And we're all sitting around at wherever the venue was, and somebody clangs the glass, and Jim and Jamie kiss. And the guy, whatever, managing the that's not good enough. If you gotta get your table together. And somebody correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, Ken. You've got to do a show tune as a group at the table to get us to kiss. And every table did it. It was so special.
invite you to take a deep breath together, returning again, as we always can, to that breath of life that is there to ground and guide and connect us. Will you lift your hearts and join me in the spirit of prayer, listening in these words for the language of faith most meaningful to you? Eternal presence, known by many names, known in many ways. We gather in gratitude for all that has been shared today. We gather in gratitude for the life of Jamie. In remembering Jamie, we have offered a gift to one another, the gift of hearing anew the ways in which Jamie has impacted us, the gift of remembering once more the ways in which Jamie was a gift to the world. We give thanks for Jamie's life, for the works of his hands, for the thoughts of his mind, for the aspirations of his spirit, for the affections of his heart. We are grateful that the tree of life bears such fruit as Jamie, that one such as he could emerge from the stars. We give thanks for all that was a source of meaning in his life, his family, his friends, his many circles of community, his artistry, his creativity, his work for equity and justice, his generosity, his character that was both wild and steadfast. We give thanks for his love and care for animals, from his cats to the critters under a rock, to the deer and the moose of the woods. We give thanks for his love of books and a good story. We give thanks for his profound friendship, for his gift to form and nourish connections, to truly see those around him in their authenticity, to affirm them, affirm you, affirm us with love. Source of our being, let the consciousness of our loss, our separation from this loved and loving man, be transformed into thanksgiving that our lives have been blessed by his beautiful presence. In the days and years before us, may we continue to open our hearts to one another, being with one another in our grief and our mourning, being with one another as we remember Jamie and all the ways his life has influenced ours. May our ideals be inspired by Jamie's ideals. May our passions be reinvigorated by Jamie's passions. And may Jamie's struggles give us the courage and the grace to face the trials of our own lives. May our memories of Jamie be a blessing to us. May our memories of Jamie help us to bless the world. May it be so. Amen. And blessed be. I invite Clay to come and share a reading, the final words of the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis.
Jamie and I shared a love of science fiction, much like he and Tim. But Jamie also really loved fantasy fiction, and I could never really get into it. And I remember years ago I was joking with him, and I said, you know, my love of science fiction proves I'm straight, and your love of fantasy proves you're gay. And without missing a beat, he says, oh, I don't need proof. And then he looked at me, and he goes, but you might need all you can get. This is the final paragraph of the Chronicles of Narnia. This is the book that introduced Jamie to the genre and why he fell in love with it. There was a real railway accident, said Aslan softly. Your father and mother and all of you are, as you used to call it in the Shadowlands, dead. The term is over. The holidays have begun. The dream is ended. This is the morning. And as he spoke, he no longer looked to them like a lion, but the things that began to happen after that were so great and beautiful that I cannot write them. And for us, this is the end of all the stories. And we can most truly say that they all lived happily ever after. But for them, it was only the beginning of the real story. All their life in this world and all their adventures in Narnia had only been the cover and the title page. Now, at last, they were beginning chapter 1 of the great story, which no one on earth has read, which goes on forever, in which every chapter is better than the one before.
The book of Psalms in the Jewish and Christian scriptures tells us that weeping may tarry for the night, but joy comes in the morning. Not while Jamie was not one to regularly quote religious scripture, there is great wisdom in these ancient lines of poetry. Knowing that we will carry Jamie with us into every new morning, into every new chapter of our lives, I invite you to rise as you are willing and able and sing hymn number 38, Morning Has Broken. In the tradition of our congregation, I invite you to place your hands over your heart for our words of benediction. Beloveds, there is sadness and there is joy. There is loss and there is love. Let there be stories born out of silence and laughter shaped from the gift of tears. May our memories be holy, and may our lives and the lives of all beings be whole. May you go in peace and go in love to be a blessing to the world. Amen, and blessed be.
That's all I can think is why I keep getting it out. It's like 20 something? 30. Yeah. Yeah. I guess you walk around so much. And walk. collaborating with them. And there seems like there's here too. Makes sense.